Hello, I'm Eric Green, Superintendent of Jackson Public Schools, and I'm so excited for Tech Jackson 2020. This is going to be a wonderful opportunity for our scholars to share, to learn, and to network all around the issues of and in the area of technology. Our young people will be at the table as many of the brightest minds in technology think through the challenges of the day, as well as some of the solutions. As you all know, COVID-19 has changed the way that we live. It's changed the way that we communicate and do business and several other things. And so I'm excited that our young people will have this opportunity to talk through those challenges, to talk through some of the latest technological advances, to help to polish some of those solutions, and even to start to build some relationships with industry leaders so they too can be a part of what works in our world. Tech 2020 will be a wonderful opportunity for all of us to grow together and to continue to build on the infrastructure that already exists here in Jackson, Mississippi. We can be at the forefront of this work. And so let's use this opportunity to thank you.
Một bạn nào? You can go ahead and start talking. Is she gonna talk?
Thank you all for joining us. I'm going to turn it over to Christine, our moderator.
All right. Good morning. My name is Christine Wooten. I attend Forest Hill High School, graduating with my class of 2021. Welcome to Tech Jackson 2020. Thank you for joining us as we focus on the education sector. This morning, we will be discussing the digital divide and how it impacts social justice, information, access, and economic freedom. Before we start, I would like to go over our housekeeping rules. Please use the chat features to type any questions you would like panelists to address through the discussion. After our session today, there will be a poll that all students in the audience need to complete. It is time sensitive. Now let's introduce our panelists. Your moderator for today is Christine Wooten. She is a senior, leading scholar, and athlete at Forest Hill High School. Christine participates heavily in Jackson Public Schools' JRTC program. She plans to study biology after graduating at Hines Community College and Howard University. Our first panelist up is Madison Cathy. Madison Cathy is a native of Hattiesburg, Mississippi, is a Dean's List scholar studying accounting at Jackson State University. On campus, she serves as the president of WEB Du Bois Marie Alvarez Harvey Honors Council and sophomore class treasurer for the 75th administration of the Student Government Association. Next up, we have Latoya Clark-Horn. Latoya Clark-Horn is the institutional technology coordinator for the Hines Community College. She holds a Master of Arts in English Education and a Master of Education in Educational Technology Leadership from the University of Louisiana at Monroe. Next up, we have Benjamin Davis. Benjamin Davis is a senior at Murrah High School and lives in Jackson, Mississippi. Ben participates in the speech and debate team, as well as various school/community organizations. He hopes to study electrical engineering in college. Last but not least, we have Olivia Johnson. Olivia Johnson is a sophomore at the JPS Tougaloo Early College High School, where she is a member of the tech team. She intends to attend Howard University. Career aspirations include becoming a cardiovascular surgeon and hospital CEO. Given that we are discussing the digital divide and its impacts, our starting point should be to address this question. What is the digital divide, and what issues or topics are highlighted within it?
I guess I'll go ahead and start. With any divide, we're talking about a gap or an uneven distribution of some kind. Typically, the digital divide refers to a gap between underprivileged members of society, such as the poor or the elderly, and those in the middle and wealthier classes as it relates to technology and internet access for communication and information. I'm pretty sure a lot of people know that those who live in rural areas or those who have certain handicaps, such as visual impairments, they tend to be affected by the digital divide. And so education is core to this discussion. And I think the question becomes, how do we ensure equal access to technologies that aid information exchange?
Yes, I agree with what Ms. Clark-Horn said. The digital divide is definitely an issue that's showing up in several communities, especially in rural communities. And in this climate of COVID, is something that has to be addressed, because without access, you don't have information, you're not connected. And as a college student, I understand how important that is to be plugged in and connected at a time like this, when it's the only option you have to connect.
Right.
So, like the other two panelists, I agree that the digital divide is, it stems from differences in access to technology. And like Ms. Horn said, it highlights education, physical disabilities, and it can tie into race and socioeconomic status.
Well, I just like to say Ben took the words right out of my mouth. The digital divide is basically just a difference between access to technology and, another thing, knowing how to use the technology. I know younger people, let's say kindergartners, and older people like our elderly, the seniors, they may not know how to use technology as well as people in their teens, 20s to 30s. It's just a difference in access and knowledge of how to use it between race, social status, financial status. There are a lot of different factors between all of them. It's just the difference between who can access it, what can they access, and do they know how to use it.
I think that's a very good point you brought up, Olivia, about do they know how to use it? And that goes right back into education. And we look at, I think, some of the inequalities that occur in different districts with regard to technology access. Would you say that, you've had a lot of, good interaction going through school, being exposed to different technologies?
Yes, I would like to say that as far as my experience goes with technology and education, it's been pretty well. My teachers have explored a range of different teaching platforms, educational platforms to try and make online learning more effective. But though this is the case for me, I don't believe everybody has the same opportunities that I have as a result of the digital divide, because my school in particular provided all of its students with computers. And as far as Wi-Fi goes, I have Wi-Fi at my house, but everybody doesn't have this.
Yeah, I definitely understand that. And I think we all know of students who had the internet access issue or even just a device issue. You have multiple children in the same household and everyone needs to be on at the same time to do, get on for school. And that can be very challenging. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Similarly to Olivia, I'm fortunate enough to have access to computers and Wi-Fi, but some of my peers aren't as fortunate, and it definitely creates a disconnect for them and puts them at a disadvantage. What about you, Ms. Clark-Horn? How do you see students show up with the disparity of some having Wi-Fi and computers and then others not? How does that affect them in the classroom?
From what I have seen, and like I said, COVID-19 was a game changer. I mean, you imagine, transitioning all of your face-to-face courses to an online environment, students who are used to coming into classes, all of a sudden having to hop on a computer or a cell phone in most cases. A lot of students were trying to do their schoolwork on cell phones. And so we asked our instructors to be considerate, instead of making these extremely long videos, like as if we were in class, synchronous learning, we said, go ahead and shorten those up. So that way, if someone is connecting with the phone, they at least, it won't be so difficult for them to watch the full-length video. I think this has just been a time that has really shown us how much infrastructure matters and how much access matters. I will even go on to say that internet access is probably a utility at this point. I mean, just as important as your lights or water, because what we're doing right now, we're meeting online because we can't be face to face. And so I don't know if this is necessarily our new normal, but it's definitely one of those where we need to be prepared in the future.
And I completely agree with you there. During this pandemic, we've been doing this since March? Online communication has become our main basis of communication. So we need to have these platforms, these resources for us to basically get what we need in life at this point, especially when it comes down to schooling, because I know there's been a situation where there are a lot of students using packets and they don't have clear instruction on how to complete those packets because all of the teachers are online. Nobody's sending home any instruction for the parents to teach their children how to do these packets. And then there's the case where some parents have to work and their other children that may be in the house have to do their school. So what are we going to do about the smaller children?
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think now that Christina is back, it can kind of segue us into our next question about transitioning the focus on lessening the impact of the digital divide. If you want to go ahead. And ask that one, Christina. Christine, I didn't mean to put you on the spot there. Do you want us to kind of keep going and then let you get back in when you're...
Okay, so actually it said someone had muted me, so I couldn't talk. You can hear me? All right. So let's focus more on the lessening of the impact of the digital divide in education. It is possible for the digital divide's impact to be minimized given today's rapid evolution of information and communication technologies.
So to answer your question, I think it is very possible. It just takes everyone stepping up and taking on the responsibility of lessening that gap and making sure that everybody has a level playing field. I know this summer I was able to intern for an accounting firm. Of course, originally the internship was set to be in Washington, D.C., but due to COVID-19, we had to switch to a remote learning experience. And one thing that the company did was send every last intern nationally. So that's probably over 1,200 interns. They sent each of us a computer so that we could still complete the internship process. And I just thought that was very commendable for the company, because there were some interns that probably wouldn't have been able to get that experience if the company hadn't sent them an intern, a laptop, not an internship.
Since we're talking about lessening the gap, my main focus is basically on the schools and the students. I believe all students should have access to a computer. If we have access to a computer inside of school, and they're supposed to have enough computers for each student, we should be able to have access outside of school as well. And I believe this is just an idea, but maybe we could start setting up Wi-Fi hotspots around the nation for people who may not have Wi-Fi at home. And I believe we're economically stable enough to do this. I believe we can do this. We just need to get a group of people to start it, basically.
It's interesting that you brought that up, because there were areas across the nation that did what they call Wi-Fi buses. And so buses would park in rural areas that were fully equipped with everything imaginable to make sure those communities had access. I thought that was really neat.
That is really neat. I love that. And what do you guys think about having, because I think Olivia made this point earlier, but about also teaching people how to use computers? Like, what steps can we take to do that? Because you can provide them with the resources, but if they don't know what to do, then they're still at a disadvantage. How do you guys think we can make that happen?
Okay. There's not really much of a chance for large groups of people to gather anymore, but if there were just these weekly sessions for either younger students or seniors to go to someplace and gather so that somebody can teach them how to use this technology, such as joining Zoom meetings or panels, anything, just teaching them how to use their technology, teaching them how to get to certain things on their computer or on their phone, that would just be a big help. Even though we can't meet in large groups, little weekly sessions with about, let's say, 20 people, that could make a large impact, because that small group of 20 people can go and teach 20 more people, 40 more people.
Yeah, I agree with that, Olivia. I have to draw on a prior experience. This was when I was in college, so this was some years ago. And I worked with an adult education program for a church, and their goal was to increase technological abilities among people in the community. And these were, your traditionally disadvantaged groups. And so what I did, I created what were called Mission Possibles, just a little play on the Mission Impossible, but they had certain objectives for each lesson. We chunked material, and I mean, we're talking about people who went from being afraid of a computer and to touch it to being able to communicate online with family members who were in other states. And so it was a very empowering process. And I think once we get people to understand that this isn't something to be afraid of, you can't break it, so to speak, then they don't mind the next challenge. And I mean, even me, I don't know how to use absolutely everything under the sun. There's just too much out there. But when you give someone the sense of they can do this, then that learning starts to transfer.
I agree with everybody's statements. I think there are governmental actions, like federal government actions and local government, that can lessen the digital divide, like just with distribution of technology and having a more streamlined version of, instead of just some schools doing it and some schools not, or some cities taking the steps and others not. There needs to be a cohesive movement and maybe some type of legislation passed to lessen the digital divide.
Well, as a follow-up, how have teachers been using technology in classes? And have they been successful in doing so?
Well, I'd like to start off this topic of conversation by saying my teachers, as I've stated before, have been using a variety of online learning platforms such as Google Classroom, interactive PowerPoints such as Nearpod and Peer Deck. There are so many different educational platforms out there, and my teachers, in order to give us a more effective, efficient learning experience, especially online, they've been just exploiting all of their options, and I just think it's great.
Yeah, I have to admit, I have to applaud instructors during this time period. So many, they were definitely given a huge task to shift online. And my hat's off to them. Honestly, when you look at already trying to manage a classroom of 26 to 32 students just in a regular setting, that's already can be challenging. So to do that in an online environment and still communicate the material that needs to be communicated, that's just phenomenal.
Yeah, I agree that educators are definitely to be applauded in these times. To give some collegiate perspective, my professors, I think campus-wide at Jackson State, have made efforts to kind of streamline everything. I know that many are using different methods of technology, but as a student, it can get overwhelming to be doing Zoom with this class and Google Meets with this class. So they have, as a collective, just try to streamline, like, let's all use Zoom, let's all use Canvas or Pearson and whatnot. So I appreciate those efforts, but I think they just tried to make everything feel as normal as possible. I know a lot of students came into this semester with several reservations about how they were going to learn virtually, but having professors that are like, hey guys, like, it's okay, this is still class, we're still gonna learn, that's been amazing, and I applaud their efforts.
I think my school has done a pretty good job of adjusting to the virtual platform. And the only difficulty that teachers are having is with student participation and letting students know that, like she just said, that school is the same and instruction can be the same even if you're on Zoom or Google Meets. So I think the adjustment is where the difficulty is.
I
Well, something I'd like
completely
to add.
agree with all of you.
Okay, something I'd like to add is that there are a lot of instances where teachers know that this is new for all of their students, so they provide a bit of leeway. Like if they're having troubles and it causes students to have troubles, they understand that. Our teachers have been very understanding when it comes to this this online platform. And I also think that's something that the teachers should be applauded on, because there aren't a lot of teachers that would do that. I just being understanding in this time is just so important, and we don't need it to affect our grades if we're having online issues, because this is new to us. So yeah.
As I said before, I completely agree with all of you. Applaud to all the teachers who bring that eccentric energy to the classroom to get us all involved and try to get us to learn more, even through these hard times of being on a Zoom or on our laptops or on our phones. But while we are focusing on that role that technology plays, let's shift this conversation towards economic freedom. Is there a relationship between wireless internet access and the creation of businesses?
In this digital age, I would say yes. I mean, everything is online, so having access to the internet, of course, is crucial. I will add, and this is just from an infrastructure standpoint, if a person has reliable, fast internet access, be it through, hardline Ethernet or Wi-Fi, what have you, as long as it's reliable, that's what matters. Most IT professionals will tell you that a hardline is the most secure way. Wi-Fi is more convenient. And I will say that because it's convenient, that's why we tend to prefer it. We don't like being tied down to a cord. And it's a plus when you're looking at the competitive business environment. In either case, as long as there's access, a person can find out how to create a business, how to write a business plan, apply for startup capital, run the business once it gets going, and, it just goes on from there. So, yeah, there's definitely a relationship.
I too think that there is definitely a relationship between internet access and starting up businesses. In this time, I have seen just a boom of new businesses being created. There's a very heavy focus and emphasis on entrepreneurship right now, and e-commerce is a hot business because not having to take on those costs of having a physical building, being able to just run your building through the internet using a website, like that saves money on your end, but you're still making money. So it increases your profit. So I definitely think that there is a relationship, and that this time having internet, it's been beneficial to entrepreneurs and business owners.
I agree with both of you completely. Having internet access does relate to the new creation of businesses. I've noticed that there are a lot of people with these great ideas, but they may be too socially anxious to actually put themselves out there. But now with everything being online, they don't actually have to get out there. They can stay with who they're comfortable with and probably record what they're selling, or record their business and post it online. And this also can reach a wider, a greater range of people. The internet is endless. Almost everybody has access to it. So this means you can start from probably in your bedroom, in your front yard, in your backyard, and you can reach someone all the way across the nation. So, yeah.
Yes, I agree with Olivia. With internet access, you literally have like the power of the world in your hands, since everybody's on their phone, and just social media access can really spread entrepreneurship. And I've seen a lot of young kids start businesses, whether it be like a cosmetic business or just art, and able to spread it throughout Jackson and the world.
Hey, Ben, can you repeat your last thought? I think you froze up for a moment.
Oh, sure. Well, I said I've seen a lot of young students, especially in Jackson, start up new businesses, and that having internet access gives you the knowledge of the world in your hands, just being able to be on your phone and utilize social media.
I'm wondering, can we talk a little bit? I know our conversation is more so been looking at the positives of internet access, but are there any negative associations that we can think of with this?
Well, one thing I can say is that when it comes down to, yes, internet access is a big role in the creation of businesses now, but it can also be a big negative in the creation of businesses, because now that we can't really go anywhere, there are some people who may not have access to internet, and they may have used that social platform to promote their businesses. And now that they're back in the house, probably somewhere where they don't have internet, they can't promote their businesses anymore. They can't get the word out. They can't get the word out that they're doing this, and that could possibly lead to somebody with probably the same idea that they have to take over that position, somebody who may have Wi-Fi.
I think that's a good point that you bring out, and that's part of the competitive environment. To add to that, though, with social media, I mean, we know social media can be great. You can advertise how you need to, you can promote things, and it can spread like wildfire. I mean, it just goes viral, right? But in that same vein, you have to be very careful to protect your brand. Your reputation online can be destroyed in a matter of moments. The moment someone has a complaint and the response isn't the way it should be. So I think a lot of entrepreneurs need to be careful about how they market themselves, what content they put out, how they respond to clients. There are new things you have to be aware of now.
I would say that one of the negatives. I'll finish. I'll say that one of the negatives of internet in general and the digital age is our overuse of being on a virtual platform and like too much information, like quantity over quality. So people get just so much at one time, they don't know how to decipher what is meaningful and what is fake news or whatever you want to call it, just isn't factual.
And I want us to like dive more into what Ben was saying about this overexposure to information in one sitting. Is there a time frame we should have? Like, how long should one sit at a computer for an extended amount of time? So, are we looking at like an hour? Is 3 hours too much just to be getting information in?
Honestly, I think it differs with each person. And for a lot of people, they can't make that decision themselves. You know, as a student, I don't get to say, like, oh, I'm only going to be on my computer for an hour today when I have 3 2-hour classes and homework and meetings. So a lot of us don't determine that for ourselves. I do think that all of us are looking at the computer right now longer than what is healthier for us to. But I would say time, it differs with each person. I think everyone should just try to limit it to the point where you are not overwhelmed and overstimulated and cranky at the end of the day when you're closing your computer. It's just, you know, it varies by person. So I don't necessarily think I can say, oh, be on it for this amount of time a day. It's different for everyone.
Right, Madison, I definitely agree with that. In my role, I'm on the computer pretty much the entire day. So, but for my son, he's 10. I have just about everything you can imagine on his devices to monitor his time. It shuts down at a certain time of day. It will give him a notification if he's been sitting for too long. Funny thing is about him, he's sort of like me. He likes to figure things out, and there have been times where he, circumvented a lot of the protections that I had in place. He didn't know I got a notification for that, but that's all right. I ended up telling him about that later, and I used it as a learning moment. I said, Jay, I am not trying to rain on your parade and, just completely limit your time. What I'm trying to get you to do is manage your time. Be aware of how long you're playing this game or how long you're watching YouTube, and that's something that we definitely have to teach our children because they will be on it all day long. We know this. And so it's like they need to do something else. It's just part of growing up, I think, in this world.
Okay, well, something I'd like to highlight, I agree with both of you that it depends on the person and we should be managing our time. But something specifically, because as far as students go, we do have to spend an unhealthy amount of time facing the computer on our classes. But as far as our leisure time, I feel like that's the main time where we need to really say, hey, I've been on this computer all day. I need to go outside. I need to go interact with my family. I don't need to be on my phone or on the computer all day, because we already spend a good amount of the morning on computers. That's enough technology to get us through the rest of the day, the next 2 days. We don't need to spend this much time in front of a computer. So in our leisure time, that's when we need to go out and be like, I need to just take some me time. I need to take some outside time, some family time.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. And if you guys are anything like me, after looking at a screen for so long, your eyes start to hurt, you start to get headaches. So we know that there are some physical issues, associated with that as well.
And another part of Ben's response is more so looking at the type of information that is being presented, whether it's fake news or it's just invalid, just opinions. Given this shift in platform for education, do we think that education has plays a more vital role in making sure that we have those critical skills to understand how to know the difference in the types of information we are reading and understanding and we're taking in?
For sure. I think one thing that education develops is those critical thinking skills to be able to discern what's true and what's not, what's opinionated, what's opinion based, and what's fact based, and then make it applicable to our own lives. So for sure.
I agree. I think it's just a skill that comes with practice. So after, sometimes on social media, you just see headlines and you may click on one, and after reading through the article, just by the tone and the way it was written, you can tell that it isn't factual or wasn't written by a credible source. So after years of just reading different documents, comparing the New York Times versus the Shade Room or whatever, you can tell the difference on what is what.
Yeah. There was a question that audience member asked earlier, or was pointing to earlier, that was looking at how the digital divide was exposing the common situation we have with poverty, how not a lot of people want to really have a conversation regarding it, the causes and effects and things of that nature. What do you see regarding that conversation regarding poverty? How does this digital divide impacts it, or what's the relationship between the two? And is there ways for us to be able to tackle poverty or help alleviate poverty?
Well, with this online platform, since everybody's basically online now, I'd say the biggest thing would be to raise awareness. Get it out there, get the issue out there. Poverty, there are a lot of people that are homeless, that are struggling, and there are a lot of people who don't really know how to help their families in this time. So by raising awareness, especially online, we can get people that can possibly help. Even though we may not personally be able to help, we can find people who are probably working on trying to fix poverty. We can find groups of people that can help these people that are struggling.
To piggyback off of that, as far as exposing the issue of poverty, that goes right back to our original issue, our original topic of, your socioeconomic status. A lot of times that dictates what your access is going to look like. That's why I also brought up how it seems like it's more of a basic utility now. Something that everyone needs, but unfortunately not everyone has the money to pay for. I know that from a legislative aspect, Ben brought up a great point, that there needs to be some action on the government side of things. I mean, if you can have entire cities who provide internet access, why can't other areas? What are the issues? One of the things that I was on when back in March, I got the phone call that said, hey, everything is shifting. And next thing I know, I'm on a phone call with all these different tech companies, from Verizon, Ceasefire, AT&T, with the governor. And we're listening on this call, and they're talking about the infrastructure and the things that they're having to do to ensure access. How some of the cell phone companies were, increasing their data caps. It was just a lot of having to mobilize and work together on. And I'm like, if we can do that then, why can't we continue that? And that way we can start to see some changes as far as poverty goes and, their access, because it will increase their opportunities.
Yes, I think that people who are economically disadvantaged, or for people who are economically disadvantaged in this virtual environment, it's showing up more than ever. You can sit on a Zoom call and see who has good Wi-Fi or not just by their video quality. So, I mean, we're able to pinpoint it and see it. And it does create issues for people, and it does put people at disadvantages, especially students, because I mean, it's access. If you don't have access, you're not plugged in, you're not able to get your work done, and you're gonna fall behind. And I've seen personally a lot of students who they took the semester off when they figured out that it was gonna be virtual. They said, I can't do it. And that's a very sad reality that students are having to do that. So I do think that there's a direct link between poverty and the direct divide, and it's something that should be addressed. I think we can all take on personal responsibility just by acknowledging that it's a privilege to be able to have certain technology and to be able to understand it. Like being a digital native, it's kind of a privilege growing up in it and like not having to work as hard as my grandparents to figure this stuff out. And also just being able to have Wi-Fi and being connected. So I think we can acknowledge our privilege and then just work to even the playing field so that some of the things that people are having to do because they don't have to do anymore.
Yeah, and I think that is something that's relatable to anyone, whether it's a panelist or an audience member, having someone in our family who's like, how can I do this with my phone or a computer? That kind of issue. But this conversation is a perfect segue into our last topic, which is more so looking at social justice. So do we see a relationship between this digital divide and social justice, or is this a cause for the social justice? I guess that's the main question.
Absolutely. I think so, because those who are affected by the digital divide, those who are disadvantaged, I mean, they don't have the same access and opportunities. And the fact that we can pinpoint that, I think that's the ammunition we need to say, like, hey, this is something that we need to address. It's a problem, and to even that playing field. So I do think that it can become or should become a social justice issue, just like Ms. Clark-Horn said, like Wi-Fi is a utility now. So we should make sure and work to make sure that people are having or have access to it.
Ben,
Okay, well,
oh, sorry, Olivia, you can continue.
no, you can go ahead. You can go ahead.
Oh, I want to hear your opinion.
Oh, I was just gonna say, as it relates to social justice, I feel like many people are beginning to understand what the digital divide is, basically just based on their friends and family, honestly, and it's just more people are beginning to see how other people really just don't have the same resources, and they can also kind of see how based on your social status or your race or some factor such as that can tie into the digital divide. Because I know and this is just from my personal experience and what I've seen, that people of color are less likely to get the same resources as, let's say, people from a different background.
Now, see, you just went into systemic racism. I don't know if you planned on doing that, but that's exactly what you did. That's a deep topic. That lets you know that a lot of the issues that we're seeing there are ingrained within systems. A lot of this started at the foundation. It's woven into our general practices. And like you said, we see a lot of the disparities along racial lines. And I mean, you look at healthcare, home ownership, education, district lines, even. You start to see patterns. A lot of this is very interconnected. You have barriers such as your credit checks, your variations in internet access, and stability across school districts. I mean, yeah, it's complex. And so, yes, it's definitely a social justice issue. Yeah, thank you for bringing that out.
And that was my point.
I would say that
No, continue on, Ben.
okay, I would say that the digital divide maybe highlights some societal issues, like in a social justice standpoint. Since March, we've had a lot of Black Lives Matter protests and more activism. So in some ways, it has jump-started the amount of activism. But on the other hand, some people may not be aware of what is going on since they don't knowledge what's going on in society, and the others being oblivious due to their lack of technology.
So what I'm understanding is we're seeing access to technology as a privilege. How does one kind of there's been a lot of efforts to make efforts to level this playing field or to gain access to certain rights or certain privileges. So how can we make ground or push through to level this playing field when we're looking at technology?
Well, I think for one, we need to provide all of our public institutions with the resources to give students what they need. So I'm glad to hear that like the JPS students, all of them have laptops. I know that's something that my home school district did as well. But for college students, you know, there are thousands of students on campus and we do have computer labs, but being that we're having the social distance now, there's an overwhelming number of students who need to access that, but not enough space to get them in that lab safely. So I think that, you know, our public institutions need resources, our public schools need resources, that pillars in the community, nonprofits in the community, they could benefit from resources that they could pass on to the people that they help. So I think just giving organizations and institutions the resources to provide resources, I think that that's a good start.
Okay, I just wanted to, I heard Madison say that she likes how JPS gives their students the resources, and I just wanted to make a point that yes, we do have the resources for our students. With me being a JPS student for almost all of my life, I know that we have the resources, but it's not always distributed. Let's just put it like that. Yet our schools, we have the resources, we have computers, and we have like Wi-Fi hotspots for the students to use in case their Wi-Fi isn't that great. But it's not always distributed to the students. Either that or it's not. Let's just say there are difficulties with them, so every student doesn't get the resources they need, although we have them. So I believe that just fixing up these resources that we already have and actually providing students with a way to get them, helping them out, that would just be a great fix for this, to just even the playing field.
Ben and Ms. Clockhorn, I want to hear you guys' opinion regarding that too.
I'll start. For tactics to lessen the digital divide now, let me see. I really don't know where's a good place to start. Something needs to happen, but there's really not like I don't know, a set in stone version of how that can be taken action. So I agree with Olivia's opinion of school systems taking the step and leveling the playing field, like she said, of students' access to laptops. Yeah, so that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, I'm pretty much on the same page with you guys. Your educational institutions have the widest reach. Nonprofits tend to have a wide reach, and so it's good to start at those particular levels, simply because of the number of people, the sheer number of people that they can reach. Are there some big tech companies involved in this? Absolutely. Between Google, Microsoft, Apple, I don't even know how many devices they have donated, during this time. But a lot of times they have your forms that you can fill out to say, hey, this particular district is in need of so many devices, and agreements can be worked out to provide those. I know a lot of schools have taken advantage of things like that. And so, I think we can all be pretty grateful for what has been done, but it just kind of shows us that we can't just strictly rely on your big tech. There has to be something done at the state level, recognition that we need to do better as a state, we need to do better as a city. And so that's, like you said, going back to what Ben said earlier, there's going to have to be some action on governmental leaders' parts.
And it kind of seems that even though there definitely, I want to first agree, yes, there needs to be some action done on the state level. There may be resources within the district right now, but does those resources meet the need of every student? I think that's one question we have to have answered first. And then the second question probably be, what's the process of how can those resources be delivered to the students? And so, Ms. Clarkhorn, I don't know if Hines does Hines give devices to their students, or is there a process in the background for students?
We haven't necessarily given devices to students. Now, what we did have was a scholarship program where a student was provided a certain amount of dollars to where they could go and purchase a device with that. They could even use it for childcare if they wanted to. It was just a matter of what was their immediate need at that time. I know with some other areas, devices are provided, particularly in the cases of those with disabilities. Because there are certain assistive software and assistive devices that are needed to ensure they have equal access. There are supports in place. Some of that I'm in charge of. For instance, you have students who they're deaf. What do? I end up taking all these videos that teachers submit to me, make sure they're closed captions, send the files back to them, so now their students have access to the same material. So when you look at the number of students, it's not just, like you said, it's not just providing devices. In most cases, you're also providing services because students are different. Some people have great abilities and some need some additional support. So yeah, you're right.
And I know we have like less than 30 minutes left of this conversation, and our chat has been going a little bit wild. So I want us to really answer some of those questions that they have. There's some questions the students sent in earlier, as well as there are some questions that was presented from the conversation that we've had so far. So one of the questions that a student submitted earlier regarding education or information access, or just education itself, how do we see like COVID as well as this digital divide impacting school for those special occasions like graduation, prom? How will this impact just regular school life?
Honestly, I'd just like to say that it all depends on how the school administrators go about things, because there are ways for, as far as prom and graduation, I'm not really sure how those things would be accommodated for. Uh, some staff and administration may actually have these type of things, but everybody's required to social distance. Just have it in a big court or something. But as far as like an educational standpoint, it all depends on how your teachers and how the school administration is going about things. Are they making sure that every student has what they need? Are they making sure that every student understands? Are they going that extra mile to make sure that you have what you need to graduate? Are they making sure that you're eligible to even go to the prom? Like, are your grades where they need to be? It all depends on what the teachers and the staff and administration are doing to help accommodate for your success.
And Madison, I know you're earlier in your academic years, but what is your vision for graduation for your class? I know you're graduating 2023, but what is your hope?
Oh my goodness. You just saying that made me, because in March when the pandemic started, I wouldn't have even thought that we would still be in November going through this. And it seems like this is going to be our way of life for a while. So you saying like, what do you envision for your graduation in 2023? It just kind of made me scared, like, oh my gosh, what if I don't get to have a real graduation? So that's a crazy reality. I would safety is first. So virtual graduations and seeing the high school students have to have some of their, those memorable social events done virtually or in a way that they can social distance. It's a little sad. And I think on a collegiate level, like not being able to have a fall football season, like that's dramatically decreased morale on campus. But I think that we all just have to put safety first. And however we have to have these events, if we can just keep the attitude that like this is for everyone's safety, then that makes it a little bit easier to bear, I think. But oh my goodness, I hope in 2023 we are not still doing anything virtually.
I think that's the sentiment for almost everyone, whether you're a senior now or you still have a few more years to go. And part of the question is, even though there are these guidelines in place for everyone to socially distance, for a good portion of events that I've observed, the intention has not been executed in a good way for safety, one, as well as just for people to be able to engage or have the same excitement that they had in the beginning. So if graduation pushed to virtual again, you wouldn't necessarily have as much of the same emotions that you would have if you're at a physical graduation. Does that kind of make sense to everyone? So what are some ways, or how can what can we strive for so that we have those same emotions or be on somewhat of a similar level of those emotions while at the same time being as safe as possible?
I would say that at the end of the day, dealing with COVID-19, we just have to accept like we don't have the power in our hands, and what the numbers are is out of our control. So we have to abide to safety at the end of the day. So even with graduation and prom, I think social distance events could be a good option instead of virtual, because a virtual event wouldn't have the same feeling like you just said. It wouldn't. I don't think it would be effective if we had a big memory like that over Zoom.
And I completely agree with that. But as I said in my previous answer, as far as something like a graduation or a prom goes, maybe the best option to not only be safe but have these same emotions, have that same happiness, that excitement that you're finally there, you're finally at your graduation. I feel like the best way to execute it is to do it outside, where like in a large field. There was something that I saw before where people had where this high school had their graduation on a beach. And I thought it was so beautiful. It was so nice. They had a stage set up for the students to still walk across. They had all of the chairs on the beach spread out, and everybody was in their cap and gowns, and everyone was happy, but they were still abiding by the social distancing guidelines. I feel like that would be the best way to go about keeping these same emotions, these same traditions, even during this time in the pandemic.
Yeah. Because I can remember, because I graduated from Jim Hill, so I can remember how graduation runs for JPS, where it's like one school after another, and we're all in that one building together. And it may be looking like for future right now, given right now, that separate days for the different schools so that you can have those guidelines in place. And they may look the same thing for colleges and universities, because you have so many students in addition to their family members and everyone else who wants to come into that one building. So I have this follow-up, or not necessarily a follow-up, I'm transitioning a little bit back into our conversation that was looking at social justice. And one audience member was wanted to have this conversation or answer this question about why is social justice so important, especially given everything that's going on right now.
Well, so I believe social justice is important, especially during this time, because a lot of things that were going unnoticed before are being exposed now. Like things such as police brutality, let's say. It wasn't as it didn't seem to be as frequent before the pandemic, before everything was just completely virtual. People were outside more. There are more people, I guess, there to witness it. So it wasn't really that bad. But now that almost everyone's in the house, it's more, I believe it's more frequent. And as far as being online goes, people can spread the message faster. And I believe social justice, especially during this time, is very important. And getting justice for these people that may have dealt with police brutality, may have been a victim to different things. This is important, especially to share online when everybody's basically on their phone all the time now.
Yes, I think that being that we're in a pandemic and watching the death of George Floyd, hearing about Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, like those things in the middle of a pandemic, with all of us kind of being still, we were able to shine a light on the injustices that happen to Black people in this country. And I think that the Black Lives Matter movement now, like the fact that we're going through it, we're able to focus on it more. You know, you could look away before, but now, you know, you can look away, but you can never say you didn't know, because it's our focus. And I think these things, or the timing of it was it's never good that it happened, but that it happened now, and that we're able to address it when, you know, we're not supposed to be outside, or when life had kind of slowed down. So you can really see, like, Black people go through their everyday lives with that weight. You know, I think people got to experience that as well. So, I mean, it's of the utmost important now. And I'm glad that it has become more of a focus, and a priority and something that we can work daily towards for justice, for all those lives lost.
And I just do want to add that social media, social networks, they have given people a space to share those common experiences. And it can get very weighty, but you have to find a way to gain perspective, to use it as a means to push forward, a means to focus, and realize what your priorities need to be. And so I thank you all for for talking about that. I really do.
And I want us to shift a little bit again. I'm so sorry for the different transitions, but this question is more so looking at the next steps for high schoolers who are graduating, as well as for individuals who are graduating from community college or going back to college. How is the digital divide impacting colleges regarding recruitment, regarding how classes will be done for like next year or next semester, even that?
All right, so I can speak a little bit on the hindsight. I'm not in recruiting, so I don't know exactly everything they're doing. But I do know a lot of things have been pushed out through social media as to how recruiting is done. I do know that a lot of the recruiters have, their personal Zooms. And so they can meet with students individually or as groups and answer a lot of questions. There have been, full-on public-facing meetings where a large group of students were invited to basically learn about the college. So we've had those. We have done some tours safely, of course. You have very small groups. I've seen them go around the campus, and so recruiting is definitely occurring. I think you mentioned graduation as well, correct? Yes, there have been some things postponed. I don't know what the future plans are for everything. Is live streaming going to be a part of it? Always. That's something we've done, period. So whatever goes on as far as graduation, it will still be live streamed. I don't know what Jackson State's plans are. I think someone's at Jackson State. I think someone else was at Tougaloo, right?
So Madison's at JSU. I'm at JSU also. Madison, I'll let you take over because I'm saying.
So there are many efforts being made to recruit students, even in this environment. If there are any high school seniors watching this, please know that these adverse circumstances, being in high school and trying to go to college in the pandemic, like that is not a closed door for you. There are still opportunities for you to go to college at Jackson State or at any school. I know one thing that I have so enjoyed seeing is the standardized test scores being waived. So for a lot of schools, and I think any student applying to college right now really needs to take advantage of that. For a lot of schools, they have waived those ACT, SAT requirements. Jackson State, we just had a high school day a couple of days ago, so we are still making those efforts to recruit students. I'm not sure how fall 2021 semester is going to look or any semester after that because things are so up in the air and fickle right now. But just know that many institutions are trying and that anything is possible, even virtually. I really don't know how like graduations or anything of that nature is going to happen, but efforts are being made and anything is possible.
And a follow-up, how do we see this digital divide impacting occupational or career fields? As well as Ben and Olivia, how are you guys preparing for the next step, given that right now you're still in high school, but your next step is coming up sooner rather than later?
Okay,
Well, right
well,
now, oh, you can go, Olivia.
okay. Well, seeing as the school I go to is literally an early college, I'd just like to say that they're preparing us by actually letting us take these classes, these college classes, and it's basically helping us to prepare by it's helping us to prepare by teaching us to prioritize and basically to be responsible for what we do. We're the ones responsible for keeping up with our college assignments and our college courses, our schedules. It's not the professors. It's not the professor's job to basically tell us, "Hey, this assignment is due tomorrow." We actually have to go to our website and look at the assignments that are due. So that's how we're preparing. We're preparing by actually starting off in these college courses.
Ben, were you
I
finna
would say
add?
that me preparing for college, I've just been trying to put my best foot forward in the college application process and writing essays and forming like my best self to submit for college applications and doing panels like this and trying to get a better understanding of just the world right now so I can have the most diverse experience when I get accepted into college and go into adult life.
Okay, something I'd like to add, something that our school does. They um they let us talk. Well, here's something current. They have made a requirement for us to go to at least one college fair this year, and we have to basically talk about. We have to do an assignment on it and talk about what was discussed in the college fair. They are exposing us to new colleges. I know last year we went on uh, field trips to colleges to basically um, give us more variety on where we want to go. And uh, this year we actually met with a college. We met with I believe it was Tennessee State, and they were telling us about how to apply for financial aid and loans, and giving us codes to basically get loans in this college's name, get scholarships, telling us ways to do that, and it was telling us how to apply even. And I just thought that was really cool, and I believe that's something that they're going to continue, but I'm not really sure yet. But that's another way that they're preparing us.
Yeah. If I can add on, that's really great to hear because it's college fair today and job fair tomorrow at JSU. Our career center is still working, even though remotely, because but they haven't skipped a beat. And honestly, a lot of, or let me say all interviews are going to be done virtually for the foreseeable future. I know I've had several via video chat, and just working on executive presence and making sure that when you're on camera that you're showing up and you're confident and you're present. I think JSU, especially in the College of Business, they've been working on that a lot with us, because in this time it's kind of forced you to get comfortable in front of the camera if you weren't already. So I think that's something that at Jackson State that's being done to prepare us for the next steps in a COVID world.
And I know we just have a few minutes left. I want to stop. I want us to give our final comments, or what is one takeaway we want the audience to like leave from this conversation about?
Okay, well, one thing I want to say is just even during this time, those of you that are on the panel, I believe that that is a sign that you have the resources you need to well, you have access to this information. So since you were here on this panel with us today, from the information that you've gained, I'd just like to say, spread the word. For the people who weren't on the panel, spread the word. Tell them what you learned from this. Spread awareness. It's all it's all about getting this information out. This is really important, and I just believe that from everything that we've discussed today, if you don't take away anything, well, you'd have to take away something, but just spread it. It doesn't take anything but probably a few minutes. Share the panel. I believe that this was recorded. If the if the people who were on the panel can go back and revisit it, share it. That's all I have to say.
Well, that was great, Olivia. And I can go next. First, I want to thank you, Maya, for allowing me to be on this panel. I've had a great time having this dialogue with you guys. And I think this conversation was so necessary and very timely. My takeaway today, and I hope everyone else's takeaway, is just the personal responsibility that we have to help others. The digital divide is something that affects people near and far to us. And if we really want to see a more equitable world, we have to take it upon ourselves to be the change that we want to see. Reach out, help who you can, and just be grateful that if you're able to have Wi-Fi and access to things that other people don't, like, be grateful and acknowledge that, so that you can use your privilege to help others. So thank you again for having me. I've really enjoyed being a part of this today.
One takeaway for me that I will leave to the audience is to be mindful of what you put in, what you're out on the internet world, what you're consuming, and to use this time with quarantine to learn a new skill or just better yourself in terms of education or pick up a new hobby. And don't this time of being at home and having access to the internet.
Yeah, just to say to all the panelists, I definitely have appreciated this forum. I think that this has been an incredibly important topic. And to echo Madison, I wrote down, I said, be an agent of change. You have power, okay? Like, don't let anyone ever tell you that you don't. At this point in time, you have access to so much information out there. And so, like Ben said, learn a new skill. You know, there is so much that you can do on your own time to increase your own abilities. And in doing so, you can help somebody else. It's that saying, each one reach one. So yeah, be an agent for change and spread the word.
Thank you so much. Firstly, thank you to everyone who was able to join our panel. I hope you were able to take away something. The purpose of this panel conversation was more so to start the conversation and for you to take any questions, any concerns, anything that stood out to you, and continue the conversation with your friends, family members, anyone, for us to still be these agents of change. And I just want to thank you to our panelists for being able to be willing and able to share your voice and your experiences and how this digital divide has impacted you. In the chat, there's going to be an exit survey for all students to complete for attendance, as well as there is a post-secondary fair with colleges and universities within the state. Information for anyone who wants to see that on the Tech Jackson website, as well as the submission for My Education, My Purpose for anyone who's interested in doing that. I look forward to seeing you guys again today at 2 for our financial literacy workshop with Hope Credit Union. Can panelists stay on for a few more moments? And this is the end of our panel. Thank you.